This is Relentless Daring on Podbean.com. Welcome to the land of bourbon and bad decisions. This is Relentless Daring on Podbean.com. I am your host, Tyler Morgan, and this week I had a great opportunity to do my first interview for the podcast. So as many of you know from the last episode, I did a segment on the movie Cuties. And I did that cold. I had not seen the movie. I was going off reports and other articles written about it. That being said, a few days later, I saw that Josh Jennings, who is a copywriter for The Blaze, had put out an article about the movie Cuties. I took the opportunity to read it, and there was a lot of points that he made in the movie that I just didn't get because I hadn't actually seen it. So I got to talking with Jennings and decided that, you know what? I'm going to watch this movie, and that way I would like to discuss your article with you on the show. And so this last week, I had the opportunity to do a virtual sit down with Jennings and discuss his article and discuss the movie and some of the more overarching points of the movie that may have been missed because of all the other controversy surrounding it. So without further ado, here is my interview with Josh Jennings from The Blaze. All right, so I am proud to welcome for my first interview here on Relentless Daring, Mr. Josh Jennings. Those of you who've been listening to The Blaze long enough, you may remember Jennings as the producer for Andrew Heaton's There's Something Off with Andrew Heaton. He's also a copywriter for The Blaze. You may have heard some of his more off-kilter ads that he writes for Glenn to do on his live reads, like the day everything was alien-related. Proud work of Mr. Josh Jennings. Jennings, welcome to the land of bourbon and bad decisions.
Thank you for having me, Tyler. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. So recently, the whole world has been worked up with the cancel Netflix phenomena over the movie Cuties, and I will admit, last week's show when I went into it completely cold. I did not watch the movie. I was making a lot of suppositions based off everything I was hearing. And then you wrote an article for The Blaze, and it was published on glenbeck.com. And you're a person whose opinion that I really respect. So I was like, okay, I want to see what Jennings had to say on this. And it was a very deep article. What was your big impression going into it when you sat down and watched that movie?
Well, first of all, thank you for your kind words. I certainly do try. The morning of, I had been listening to Susan's show, and he brought it up and he talked about it, and he was talking to Stu about it, and they mentioned that neither of them had seen it yet, but that and it just looks really awful. And I guess out of a morbid curiosity, I thought, well, I have Netflix. I'm going to give this, let's watch a few minutes of it and see if it's really all that bad. And I watched about 30 minutes, and I turned it off because I was fairly disgusted, and I thought, okay, this is actually not great, but it nagged at me because I hadn't been expecting there to be anything good about it. I hadn't been expecting it to be well produced, first of all, and I hadn't been expecting there to be any sort of good messaging in the film. I just sort of expected the sort of standard. For lack of a better way to put it, the standard sort of let's show how stupid conservatives are, and let's flash some with what I'd seen. But the expectation that I'd gone in with was not met, because I found that there were twists that it was taking that I was not expecting.
Oh yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree. Going into it, yeah, I was like you. I was expecting just an hour and a half of, oh my God, what am I watching? And then in your article, you described it as almost like a Stand By Me redux. And I, at first, when I saw that in your article, I was like, okay, if he's going back to one of the better movies that I've seen growing up, one of my favorite Stephen King short stories. Now I definitely need to take the time and really watch it. And yeah, it's definitely, I think it'd be a great coming of age story. I mean, you could still have the references to the dancing and all that, but like you said in your article, just the explicit body tracking shots. The first member of that dance crew, when she's introduced in the apartments, she's wearing a pair of, skin tight leather pants and just dancing around the laundry room, very provocatively. And it's just like, really, is that necessary to move the story along?
Yeah, and not only that, but I think that first scene that you're describing is evocative of the tone of the film, because when we first encounter anything provocative, is that moment, and it is this 11-year-old girl who's in skin tight clothing dancing around the laundry room. She's dancing around the laundry room with her back to us, and so if you go into the film not knowing the premise, you would not necessarily know from moment one that this is an 11-year-old girl. She turns around at some point, and this surprises the main character, and it's meant to surprise us as the audience. She turns around and flips her hair back, and we see, oh my God, it's an 11-year-old girl who happens to look an awful lot like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Yeah. Yeah, I know in the original publication that, you mentioned that, we'll get back to it later. And then, that get back to it was edited out.
Yeah, I had to have them fix that.
Yeah, I remember seeing that. It's like,
yeah. Well, the original article was 2,800 words long.
Woo.
Or no, I'm sorry, it was 2,700 words long. Yeah, and when I sent it to the producer, she got back to me and she said that this is way too long. I'm afraid you're going to lose people. Why don't you see if you can cut it down to, I think it was like 1,800 words, final word count or something like that. So I went in and I beautifully edited things out. And one of the things that I pulled out was the discussion about the Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez angle. But then I forgot to take out the part about we'll talk about this later in the article. So I had to fix that. But several people caught that, and I had to keep myself from jumping out a window.
It happens in the editing process. I know I've had people go back on, message me about my shows like, hey, you started to get into this, and then because I don't pre-write anything, I'm a very just flow of consciousness person when I do my show. So I might make a reference and with the intention of I'm going to get into this, and then off I go down the train tracks and completely forget that point. And people are like, you need to kind of back off on that. I'm like, yeah, I know. But like I said in our offline discussions, I'm a very Bill O'Reilly. We'll do it live. F it, we'll do it live. And so you get things like in this interview, there's a Pomeranian yapping in the background because, yeah, you can only edit so much.
Good show ambiance adds a touch of realism.
Right. But yeah, and it's like really like the intentional making the one character look like AOC though. It's like our was I don't know if that was an attempt to kind of like fetishize even more than what's going on. It's just it seemed like a really unnecessary thing, but and again, there's a lot of stuff in that movie that was completely unnecessary.
Yeah, I think this film is a circus of unnecessary things. And the AOC thing, ultimately, I don't know how important it is. There's no question, I think, to any sane viewer that it was intentional. But I think that um, the takeaway, without speaking to the director and asking outright, um, my takeaway is probably that this was done in the same vein as everything else in this film, and I have come to believe that the director did this with good intentions, um, because quite rightly, she assessed that sometimes films have to make us uncomfortable in order for us to get something that's going on in our in our world. Um, she has explicitly said that this is a film about um, the exploitation, um, almost disembodied exploitation of social media, or of children, particularly girls, on the part of social media. but I don't know. It was an interesting, weird touch. And again, having that be your opening scene of sort of provocative material, um, was a little bit jarring because, um, not not to get too graphic here, but if you go into this film and you don't know what you're getting into, nobody's explained this to you, you haven't read anything about it, uh, you're just watching it. The first impression that you would get is how this little 11-year-old girl has walked by her apartment building's um, laundry room, and there's a young woman in there dancing, and feeling very free, which is what this little girl wants. She desperately wants to be free from the sort of controlling aspects of her own home life. And so you might even, as a guy in particular, you might look on this, sort of pruriently, even at the beginning, because you don't know what you're seeing. And then when this girl turns around and flips her hair back, you get the shock of your life. Oh, I just watched an 11-year-old girl do a provocative dance. Um, so I think, I think the director's intention is to kind of hit you in the face with cold water, um, in every way that can be interpreted. Um, and it succeeds, but at what cost?
I agree. And like one of the big things, and like I said, the social media aspect of it, you don't have to watch a movie to see what young girls are doing for likes and retweets and all that on social media. You just have to log into TikTok and look at some of the videos they make, and you know they're imitating the people they see. They're imitating the Cardi B's and the Kim Kardashians and all this stuff, and because for whatever reason, I think Glenn Beck really goes into it in Addicted to Outrage and the dopamine hits and all that you get with social media when someone hits that like button. Um, but and it becomes an addiction to the point where they're doing more and more provocative things, and we see this throughout the course of the movie where she starts doing leading, Ami, the the girl who kind of stumbles across all of this and is looking to escape, the overbearing home life from her family. She's the one who really starts getting them to push the envelope. She's the one who gets them twerking and, starting to hump the floors and all that whenever they're, performing.
Right.
And it's one of those things, it just keeps going, further and further until, one of the things she does is the cell phone that she's using the entire movie is a stolen phone. And even with her behavior, when confronted, hey, that's my phone, she's taking this very maladjusted take on sexuality that she's beginning to develop and trying to seduce the owner of the phone to avoid getting in trouble.
Yeah, and in fact, it's essentially her first impulse, and it's very clear that she doesn't know what she's doing, but that she understands that this is what she's supposed to be doing. And I have to say, and I tried to be very even-handed in the way that I reviewed the film. Hopefully, succeeded at that. I have to say, for as disturbing as some of this is, it's so well done. The actress who plays Anna, in particular, might well be the best child actress I've ever seen. She's so phenomenally good at expressing what she's supposed to be expressing. But again, as before, at what cost?
Right. And that's one of the, I think that's one of the biggest things that gets lost in the movie because of how much how much provocative nature is there. Um, there are some very, very heartwarming scenes and, scenes that hit you right in the feels, where they're out kind of playing on the edge of the tracks. And the one girl, she finds a condom and is playing with it. And they all freak out about, oh, AIDS, 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 don't touch us, don't touch us. And then to the point that girl is crying.
Yeah.
And then immediately into levity with, washing her mouth out with soap and all that. It's amazing tension breaker. And, like we said, comparing it to Stand By Me, where there's scenes where those boys get into some very tense situations. And then all of a sudden it's something to laugh at. It's like, whew, dodge that emotional bullet.
Well, and yeah, and it is actually there's a pretty direct parallel in Stand By Me. Excuse me, I haven't seen the film in a while, so I might get this slightly wrong. But there's a scene I think in the movie where I don't remember the name of the character. I think Teddy maybe. But one of the kids has a really horrible home life, and his father's I think abusive or something like that, and the kids are teasing him and teasing him and teasing him, and they've been teasing him about his terrible father, and then at some point he snaps and has this really just emotional breakdown moment, and it's a very powerful moment in the movie, and then next thing you know they rub some dirt on it and walk away, to use baseball parlance, and we're back to a montage of have gun will travel, walking down the railroad. This film had the scene you just described is very parallel to that, I think, and it's again beautifully done, well acted, it's well shot. This was a first time director too. This was her first feature film. So I mean, it's very impressive. And were it not for the really over the top sexualization of these kids, I would not be able to recommend this movie highly enough.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'll agree. This movie was masterfully shot. You said this, I agree with you. The scoring was amazing. And even the subplot of, you know, I think the subplot of, her being in the very culturally strict Senegalese family, even, if you take the, the religion part of it out, just her trying to, rebel against those cultural norms has been, and then you're seeing that conflicting throughout the movie. You know, I think that's one of the best subplot in the movie is, seeing, what she's doing, rebel against her mom, rebel against her dad who went back to Senegal to find another wife, the overbearing aunt. And then at the end of the movie, there's the closure with her mom when her mom's just pretty much, if you want to come to the wedding, you can come. If you don't, I'm not going to force you. And there a realization that, this is not necessarily her culture growing up in France.
Right. Yeah. The most frustrating thing about this film is how it left me at the end. I mean, the ending of this movie is so beautiful because this little girl manages to sever the necessary ties with her family to be able to stay sane, which is to say not all of them, but she retains enough independence that you get the idea that she's going to be able to grow up and form her own opinions about things and whatnot, but at the same time sever her ties to this hypersexualized world as well, and just be an 11-year-old girl. For those who are watching, listening, who have not seen the film and don't plan to, spoiler alert for those of you who do, the final scene of the film, as you pointed out, her mother tells her that she does not have to witness her father's second wedding because her father is now a bigamist and is marrying a second wife. And so she goes outside, and for the first time in the film since the beginning, she's dressed appropriately for her age. She's just an 11-year-old girl. There's some kids on the sidewalk who are playing jump rope, and they invite her. They don't even say anything. They just kind of, I think they just gesture toward her, but they might say something. Anyway, she goes over and starts jumping rope, and the final shot of the film is a tracking shot upward. I think that's what you call it. And the camera is rising.
And she's still continuing to jump into the frame with a bigger and bigger smile as she goes. Yeah, it's
a little bit higher each time. Yeah, there's no dialogue that is beautiful, and it's left me. I'm not kidding. At the end of this movie, I had like a tear in my eye. It's just gloriously beautiful with an unfortunate side effect.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I'm just glad that there was during all the hypersexualized dancing, there was a scene when they go to the dance competition and everyone's really enjoying the show, even though, okay, it's little raunchy, but whatever. A lot of these, dance competitions are. And then as they really, really get into the sexualized dancing, the camera cuts to moms and dads and the judges, and you can see the look of disgust on their face. Like, what are we watching? And I think that's where I think it really turned a corner for me watching the movie is that, the people in the audience eventually stopped clapping.
Right. Yeah, you start hearing some groans and boos and things like that, kind of interspersed throughout. Yeah, it's so fascinating because it's a film. I think I said this in the article. It's a film that's at war with its own ideology, um, and you want it to not be because there's so much good to pull from it. frontline war film, somebody gets shot and they grab the chest and fall over and they're dead. And that's somewhat effective. But then I watched something like Saving Private Ryan, and I said this also in the article. First of all, you've seen Saving Private Ryan, right?
Yes. Yeah, that opening scene where you're seeing guys literally walking, carrying his own arm. You know, and it's incredibly graphic, but it's
something like that.
Oh yeah, and you know, even me having been to Afghanistan, yeah, I'm not afraid to say I have post-traumatic stress disorder from, you know, not from anything I've done, not from anything I've experienced, but you know, at our combat outpost, we had a bazaar nearby, and over a course of just a couple of days, we had a number of, you know, mass casualty events where Afghan National Police were brought in and children because an insurgent lobbed a grenade in the fruit stand of this bazaar, and seeing kids who they only had the misfortune of living in a country at war became casualties. It was a rage that I was literally ready to grab a machine gun, just walk through and just mow the whole damn thing down. And fast forward, you know, a month or so down the road, and I'm escorting blown up bad guys to a combat support hospital, and that doesn't bother me. Look across the ICU and see a kid missing a foot, and that's the first time it really hits me that there's something not right here. And that's one of those things, it's like, it's uncomfortable, and it's awful feeling for me to see kids who are hurt, see kids who are in agony through something that is done to them by someone else. But if I just turn away from it, it's not going to make me better. It's just going to, you know, kind of a personal, you know, thing there. But, you know, I think it gives some.
Well, I think that's very salient. And I would ask you, as somebody who's been closer to this, certainly than I have, probably a lot of your listeners, as somebody who's been close to that, what is your opinion of something like Saving Private Ryan or you know, the more modern films where war is depicted in its, you know, it's sort of red and tooth and claw nature? Do you think that is a useful thing for the American viewing public to see?
I think it is.
Point home, or do you think that it's gratuitous?
I mean, to a point, it is gratuitous, but at the same time, so many people, you know, prior to Vietnam, American war was a fairly sterile thing. Prior to Vietnam, we got radio reports and, you know, maybe the newsreel with some very highly selected video that would play at the movie theater. But then, you know, Vietnam happened, and now you're seeing American troops with bandages on them, and you can see the blood. And so it became more graphic, and I think it's like, yes, you know, seeing the guy carrying his own arm, some people say that's gratuitous. I'm like, that's a dude in shock who just kind of he's on autopilot. You know, I've seen guys who, yeah, I have had a buddy, did not suffer any outward injuries from an IED, completed the mission, got back to base. You know, he took all of his gear off, and then immediately, you know, started getting sick because of concussion. It all of a sudden the adrenaline wore off, and so now his because of the concussion, his he developed vertigo so bad that he just immediately started throwing up. And it's like, yeah, we're getting you out now, you know. And he ended up spending the rest of the deployment still in Afghanistan, but he was in a non-combat role because like, we don't want, you have an invisible injury that we need to keep an eye on, but we have a role that you can serve over here to help, your other soldiers. And again, going, and I think, that, so seeing those, I know people don't like to see the gore in war movies because, I remember in John Wayne movies or, all these back in the 50s and 60s, I remember that someone was shot and they died. You didn't see, trying to think, can't think of the actor's name on Saving Private Ryan. He gets gut shot and it's, a 10-minute ordeal. It's a 10-minute ordeal while they're trying to get the powder and the bandages and all that. And cause he's the medic and he's trying to talk him through it. And, same thing with going back into Cuties. We see this movie and we want to throw a fit. Oh my God, this is hypersexualizing our kids and blah, 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 blah. It's like watching the Super Bowl this last year. My daughter, after seeing one of the shots of Shakira, she goes, wow, I didn't know you could look at her kidneys from that view. I mean, it's like we have people in culture, we throw a fit about this stuff all the time, but it takes a French film that like you said, it tells an amazing story and it really puts these ideas right in our faces when we have to confront it. And suddenly, we have to cancel our Netflix because that's just so offensive. It's like, well, why aren't you, turning off the MTV and the VH1 and all that when your kids are, kids are watching, Cardi B sing about her what?
Yeah, no, that's a really excellent point. I'm of two minds about it. I do understand. I do understand the point of view of the people who say that they want to cancel their Netflix or that they have already canceled their Netflix account. I understand it because I think that there are everybody has lines. Everybody has a line, past which you shall not cross, or else I will fill in the blank. And I get it, especially for parents. I'm a parent. I have a 10-year-old who's getting ready to turn 11 here in a few months. Thank God he's a boy. I have boys, and especially after seeing this film, I am grateful that I don't have to raise girls. But I would not want him seeing this movie.
Oh, absolutely. My 15-year-old daughter, she got mad that I watched that movie without her. She's like, I really wanted to see if it was as bad as everyone says. I'm like, no, trust me. There's a reason why I locked myself in the office and watched it, away from everyone else, because there's a lot of stuff that I said, she's 15. She makes her own decisions. And I think she's very well reasoned, very well grounded. I think we've at least succeeded that much with her. And it's just one of those, like, no, as your dad, I'm saying, no, I'm not going to let you watch this movie with me. And of course, she has satellite TV in her room, whereas she wants to use that to get on Netflix and watch it anyways. I really can't stop her. But as a dad, I can say I advise against watching this. A pair of scissors.
Yeah, and for my 10-year-old, I mean, I wouldn't let him watch that, but I also wouldn't let him watch, Cardi B's WAP or, in fact, if I remember correctly, we watched last year's Super Bowl, and I think I maybe sent him out of the room during the halftime show, and just to be really clear here, and I suspect that you I am not a prude. I'm not. I have a great and abiding respect for the people's ability to express themselves in art. I think that there can be art that is very um, deviant from the norm, that suborns the current paradigm.
If only there was a website devoted to deviant art.
If only, yeah. I've got no problem with artistic expression, and I've even got no problem with. I have no problem with the making of this film. I really don't. I think this movie. I think that it had you gone in and changed some of the camera shots, and I don't even mean all of them. And in fact, this will be controversial. I'm not even sure that I mean the dancing, because I think the dancing is at least
The dancing gives context to what the point of the movie is.
it does.
I mean,
and I don't think that you necessarily had to take it as far as it went, but I don't think that I wouldn't have cut all of that out. What I would have cut out is all of the other scenes that are very, very clearly the stock femme fatale.
oh yeah, like the scene where they're dancing on the stairs, like the scene where they're dancing on that stairway, and they're doing the very evocative, suck on a finger, and obviously a stand-in for fellatio, and it's just like, come on now, that is above and beyond the pale.
They're even, yeah, and there are more subtle examples that I think are actually in some ways works. There's a scene towards the end where Ami finds herself angry at some girl and goes up and just decks her.
Oh yeah,
and at some point they during the fight, this girl's friends sort of set to on her and pull her pants down. And again, I swear I'm not a prude, but like I don't need the camera to lovingly scroll across.
I don't need to see the cats on her underwear. Yeah, got it. It's like, yes, she got pants in the fight. Understand, but yeah, like you say, you don't have to zoom in and pause long enough for people to pick up detail.
You don't have to shoot it as if you were pantsing Scarlett Johansson.
Yes.
I think that's because if you pants Scarlett Johansson in a film,
that's exactly what happened. They would do a slow-mo pan shot, a tracking shot going down her butt, so everyone would be like, it's Scarlett Johansson's butt.
I'm really glad I paid $20 to see this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, dopamine, like we talked earlier. Yeah, it's that makes sense. 11-year-old girl, not so much. So it's things like that in the movie that I found the most disturbing. And there are a bunch of. I didn't even count, but they're all over.
Yeah, I tried to write them down on the white space on when I printed your article off, and it's like, nope, I quit. I think I wrote down like 4 or 5, and it's like, no, I'm just going to get writer's cramp every time I see that's a particularly egregious scene.
Yeah, exactly. So it really is like it's. I mean, it's the turd in the punch bowl. I mean, it's that. It's like maybe you've heard that expression.
Mm-hmm.
Punch bowl. That maybe it's a very small turd, but
it still it ruins the whole punch.
Which is why at the end of the article I said, and I still think I stand by this, I can't recommend this movie. I can say that if you watch this movie, 1, don't watch it around children, and 2, you're going to be, if you have any sort of cinematic appreciation at all, you're going to be bowled over, and you're going to feel probably somewhat conflicted at the end, because you might not have the burning rage toward it that you had going into it, and that's not necessarily comfortable. It's
Oh yeah, the cognitive dissonance as you're watching this movie and you're saying this shot should outrage me because it's very explicit, and then it turns around and does a very artistic shot the next scene with amazing scoring and all that in the background. It's like, okay, I want to like the movie, but I can't. It's like I said, my cognitive dissonance level watching the movie was off the charts.
Yeah, yeah, I get that, and I think typically I can typically compartmentalize a film, even if it has some overt things that I don't care for. I tend to get irritated by films that are overly political, and just by dint of them coming primarily from Hollywood, most of them are coming from a liberal perspective. But I mean, I've watched conservative movies that irritated me too because it got ham-handedly political, and it's like I'm not really watching this to be told what my politics should be. I'm watching this because I want to see a good story, good characters, etc. But I can usually compartmentalize it. If I see an Oliver Stone film, for example, I can appreciate the film for what it is, and at the same time recognize, okay, this is clearly made from the perspective of somebody who has a very left of center point of view when it comes to politics. He wants you to know it, and he would like you to believe that he's right.
As I don't remember the name of it, but also on Netflix you can find Oliver Stone's Unknown History or Hidden History of the United States. It's basically he made a documentary version of the Howard Zinn book, and it's just like, come on now.
Oh gosh, I didn't even know that.
Yeah, if you flip through the documentaries, you'll eventually come across it. I've seen it up there. I don't know how many times. It's like I should watch it for the the intellectual reason of what is their worldview saying on these events.
Right.
I mean, and sometimes I'm not saying that their view is wrong. However, it might give a different perspective. I remember listening through to some of the stories on the Revisionist History podcast from Malcolm Gladwell. He has a very overt point of view. The very first episode, he's telling the state of Texas to use its constitutional authority to divide into 5 states because nearly all of them will give 2 Democrat senators and completely throw the U.S. Senate into shambles. I mean, very overt, but listen to it. But listening to it, there's some things where it's like, okay, that's an interesting point of view. And there's something that completely changed my mind on. Listening to it, my take on Brown versus the Board of Education, I think was a good ruling, but for all the wrong reasons, because it was not based in the idea of separate but equal is wrong. It was based in the idea of these black teachers cannot teach as good as white teachers, so we need to integrate the schools. And it's like, and then I actually went and read through the ruling, and it's like, my mind has completely changed on why this is not a good ruling because it was made for all the wrong reasons. I mean, it's so seeing things like I said, that Oliver Stone history documentary, I want to watch it for just for the intellectual reason of it, not because I agree with his politics and how he views history.
Right. Yeah, I agree. So, I think in the final analysis of Cuties, I like I said, I can't recommend it, but I can say that that I need to advise anybody one way or the other, but I think, you know, if you are the sort of person who can subject yourself to this without A, throwing up, or B, discovering some pedophilic tendency within yourself that you didn't know was there before. If those two things aren't going to happen, and you can, watch it where your children are not going to see it. I don't think that it's something to be afraid of. I don't think it's something to be banned. I don't think it's something to be. I don't know how I feel about canceling the Netflix subscription over it, because I do think it is vile. But I think that I guess what I would say is that the people, if we're going to argue against it, because I think ultimately the real fear here isn't the film. The real fear here is, are we normalizing in our society things that portray children as having some sort of sexual agency that they do not in real life, or at least should not? And if that's a real concern, and I think it is, then it means that we who believe that need to be about the business of changing hearts and minds. I don't think that saying to somebody who is on the other side of this argument, this is terrible, this is child pornography, I canceled my Netflix subscription over it, I bought a copy of the DVD just so I could burn it, I don't think that's going to change anybody's mind. However, people like you and I, who are sitting here having a conversation, having both watched the film, have taken the time to think about it and analyze it, I think either one of us could talk to somebody on the other side of the issue and maybe have a valuable conversation in which the other person might have something to think about at the end of it. Now, we might also. But I think that the real concern here, as I said before, is what is downstream from what is going on right now in entertainment. And if the answer is anything having to do with normalizing pedophilia, or child pornography, or even just child hypersexualization at an early age, then I think it's vital for us to be in the business of trying to change hearts and minds away from that. And I think you're only going to do that through nuanced conversation.
Right. And it's bad enough when you have news and opinion outlets like Slate that comes out, and Mother Jones and several others that are decidedly leftist, who come out and they write articles. Well, it's not pedophilia. Pedophilia is a crime. This is the minor attracted person. And they're trying to turn it into a sexuality. And I think that makes an even harder argument for people who say stuff like this, and trying to have the nuanced conversation about a movie that's very questionable. It makes it even harder. In the 1800s, and especially towards the end of during the Civil War and right after, when Mark Twain was writing Huckleberry Finn and Tom Sawyer, and if you try to look at those books through the historical perspective of his time when he was writing them, I mean, those books were the literary version of Cuties today. Like, wait, a white kid and a runaway slave can be friends? And in the South, Missouri was a slave state during the Civil War. So in Missouri, Mark Twain's home state, even post-war, that would have been a huge slap in the face to a lot of people. And so I think culture does need to have these slap you in the face, moments where we can confront things like, hypersexualization of children. Doing it with a movie that, people can use as a pause moment and get that dopamine fix, I don't think is the way to go about it. But I think for people who are willing to have the conversation, I think it's good. But like we've said throughout this interview, I think there's a better way to do it.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I would, I would love to have been on the staff of the filmmaking crew just long enough to have said,
just long enough to gotten fired.
Let's maybe don't use that camera angle.
Right. Well, Josh, it has been a great conversation. I am glad to have had you on. I hope to do this again one day.
Yeah, me too. Thank you very much for having me on. It's been a pleasure. I've really enjoyed it.
All right. For anyone who's wanting to follow Josh's work, is there anywhere they can go to?
Yeah, I'm actually for right now. I'm building a Facebook sort of fan page or fan group, I guess.
All kinds of food porn.
Me on that. Yes, the food porn. Yeah, for those of you who don't know, I dip my toe in the pool of cooking from time to time, and I like to post pictures of it because apparently I'm not with the times and realize that's so 5 years ago or something. But yeah, so you can find me on Facebook at Josh Jennings. I'm on Twitter. My Twitter handle is at cufflinkdive, which is a long story. And I'm building a website. It is actually not up and running yet, but once it is up and running, I'll let you know, and you can have me on again. We'll talk about something else.
All right, absolutely. Thank you again for coming on, Josh. Appreciate it.
Right?
Right? All right, thanks for coming on. All right, so that's going to conclude this episode. I hope you all enjoyed the interview with Jennings as much as I enjoyed sitting down talking with him via Skype. I'd like to take this opportunity to say that to thank you, the audience, who is currently helping keep this show afloat. If you go to relentlessdaring.com, at the top of the page, you will notice a donate button. You can click there and you can set up a one-time or a recurring donation, and that, goes into the show. You can also buy merch there. And again, a couple weeks ago, I introduced masks, both the 99% ineffective and the virtue signal models. That way you can show people what you think of the mask when you wear them. Again, thank you so very much. It's everything that goes on with this. It's because of you. You keep me wanting to come back every week and put this show on. And I am so glad to do it. And being able to expand out and begin talking to people and beginning to network and build more, it's because you guys have given me that opportunity, and I thank you so very much. Also, don't forget, I ask you to do 4 things every week. Number 1, go to Apple iTunes if that's where you listen to it, and subscribe. More subscribers, it helps the algorithm to find more people. Number 2, leave a 5-star review or leave a 5-star rating. Then number 3, leave a nice review. That way people start to see, oh, well, it's highly rated. What are people saying about it? And then they can actually go and look, see what you all think, except for that one guy, you know who you are, you dirty troll. And number 4, share the podcast. Send it to someone you like who you think will like the show. Send it to someone who you like, who you think will absolutely hate the show, and is going to drive them bat crap crazy. Either way, I'm good with it. Again, thank you so very much. Oh, and also, by the way, I'd like to announce the show is now available on Amazon Music as well. So if you have Amazon Music, you can now find podcasts on it. Go there, search Relentless Daring, and you'll be able to stream all the episodes there. It's absolutely awesome. Still waiting on Pandora. They're kind of slow. Again, thank you so much. Y'all are making all of this worthwhile for me. And as always, stay relentless.